Let me start by saying this. Life has a funny way of kicking you when you're already down. And trust me, I've been there, literally holding a cardboard box with my stapler and half-used notebooks while walking out of the office like some cliché scene from a bad movie. But here's the twist. What happened next changed everything. Spoiler alert! I went from being called useless to standing on a stage, accepting an award that made me feel like the hero of my own story. If you want to hear how I turned humiliation into triumph, and maybe pick up a few life lessons along the way, hit subscribe, because this is one wild ride you won't want to miss. So, let's rewind to that Monday morning, shall we? Picture this. I'm sitting at my desk at Sterling & Company, sipping coffee that tastes like regret and staring at a spreadsheet so complicated it could give someone a migraine. My name's Sophie Lane, by the way, or at least that's what my email signature says. In reality, I was just another invisible cog in the corporate machine, grinding away day after day, hoping someone would notice how hard I worked. That morning, I had pulled an all-nighter finishing a report for Evan Hartley, the golden child of the company, or as I like to call him, the human equivalent of a shiny sports car with no brakes. He strutted around the office like he owned the place, which technically he did since his dad, Charles Sterling, founded the firm. Don't get me wrong, Evan wasn't completely useless. He excelled at taking credit for other people's work. Like mine. Anyway, back to the story. I handed over the report to Evan, confident it was flawless. Numbers balanced, charts color-coded, fonts perfectly aligned, you know, the kind of obsessive attention to detail that makes accountants cry tears of joy. But instead of gratitude, what do I get? A side-eye glance and a muttered whatever. Fast forward to the big client meeting later that afternoon, where Evan proudly presents my report as if he dreamed it up himself. Not only that, but he actually criticizes parts of it in front of everyone, implying that whoever put it together clearly didn't understand the bigger picture. That whoever, of course, was me. Walking back to my desk, I felt a mixed order of rage and shame bubbling inside me. So, naturally, I decided to confront him. Big mistake. When I asked why he dismissed my work, Evan looked at me like I was gum stuck to his shoe and said two words that still echo in my nightmares. You're useless. Okay, buckle up, because things are about to get even worse before they get better. Remember how I mentioned walking out of the office with a cardboard box? Yeah, that happened less than 24 hours after Evan called me useless. Let me set the scene for you. It's Tuesday morning, and I'm sitting at my desk, trying to shake off yesterday's disaster. I'm determined not to let Evan ruin my vibe, even though deep down, I feel like crawling under a rock and staying there forever. Then, out of nowhere, HR shows up. You know those moments in movies where someone walks into the room and you instantly know something bad is about to happen? That's exactly how it felt. They escort me to Evan's office, where he sits behind his desk looking smugger than ever. Without even offering me a seat, he launches into this ridiculous speech about how I'm not a good fit for the company culture. Culture? Seriously? This coming from the guy who thinks belittling people is acceptable behavior. By the time he finishes, I'm too stunned to argue. Instead, I pack up my stuff in silence, clutching my dignity like it's the last thing I have left. As I step onto the crowded streets of Manhattan, I can't help but wonder, how did it come to this? Was I really useless, or was I just surrounded by people who refused to see my value? Now, here's where the plot thickens. The very next morning, as I'm drowning my sorrows in a pint of Ben & Jerry's and updating my LinkedIn profile, my phone rings. It's an unknown number, which immediately sends my anxiety skyrocketed. Who could it be? A debt collector? A telemarketer selling timeshares? Nope. It's Charles Sterling, the big boss himself. At first, I think it's a prank call. Why would the founder of Sterling & Company personally reach out to someone like me? But sure enough, his voice comes through loud and clear. Sophie, he says, I'd like to meet with you today. Can you come to the office? Let me pause here and tell you something. When life hands you lemons, sometimes it throws in a whole orchard without warning. I spent the entire cab ride to the office oscillating between excitement and paranoia. Was this a trap? Had Evan orchestrated some elaborate scheme to humiliate me further? Or was this my chance to fight back and reclaim my dignity? Spoiler alert, it was neither. Well, sort of. But more on that later. For now, all I knew was that I needed answers, and maybe a Xanax. Walking into Charles Sterling's office felt surreal. Imagine stepping into a room that screams power but also oddly comforting vibes. Think leather chairs, mahogany desks, and framed photos of his family, including one of him and Evan that made me cringe slightly. Charles greeted me warmly, offering me coffee and making small talk about the weather. At first, I thought he was stalling, but then he got straight to the point. Turns out, he'd been reviewing recent projects and noticed discrepancies in how certain employees were credited for their work. Specifically, my work. He leaned forward, his expression serious yet kind. "Sophie," he said, "I need to know what happened between you and my son." For a moment, I froze. Should I sugarcoat it? Lie? Play dumb? But something about Charles's demeanor told me honesty was the best policy. So, I spilled everything, the late nights, the stolen credit, the insults, and finally, the firing. By the end, I was practically shaking, half expecting him to dismiss me as overly emotional or exaggerating. Instead, he sighed deeply and said, "I'm sorry, Sophie. You deserve better." Just like that, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Someone finally believed me, and not just anyone, but the man who literally signs everyone's paychecks. After apologizing profusely, Charles dropped a bombshell. He wanted me back, at a higher level, no less. Apparently, the company was launching a new division focused on innovative financial solutions for startups and small businesses, and he wanted me to lead a key project within it. At first, I thought I misheard him. Me? Led a project? After everything that happened? But Charles assured me it wasn't pity, it was recognition. He saw potential in me, even when others didn't. Still, I hesitated. Could I really go back to Sterling and Company, knowing Evan was still lurking somewhere in the shadows? What if history repeated itself? Sensing my hesitation, Charles promised transparency and support, adding that this new team operated independently of Evan's influence. As I left his office, my head was spinning. On one hand, it felt like fate giving me a second chance. On the other, it felt like walking into a lion's den armed with nothing but a butter knife. Stay tuned, folks, because this decision is going to change everything, for better or worse. Let me tell you something about decisions. They're like ordering food at a fancy restaurant. You stare at the menu for 20 minutes, overthink every option, and then second-guess yourself the moment your plate arrives. That's exactly how I felt after Charles's offer. Was this my chance to rise above everything Evan had thrown at me? Or was I setting myself up for another round of humiliation? That night, I called my best friend, Mia Harper, because let's face it, when life throws curveballs, you need someone who'll throw them back with brutally honest advice. We met at our usual spot, a cozy diner in Brooklyn where the coffee tastes like burnt hope but the pancakes are worth every calorie. "Take it," Mia said without hesitation, stabbing her fork into a stack of syrup-drenched pancakes. "This isn't just about revenge or proving Evan wrong. It's about showing yourself that you're capable of more than what they gave you credit for." Her words hit home. Deep down, I knew she was right. This wasn't just about Sterling and Company. It was about reclaiming my confidence and proving to myself that I wasn't the person Evan tried to make me believe I was. Still, doubt lingered. What if I failed? What if Evan found a way to sabotage me again? The next morning, I sent Charles an email accepting his offer, but not before negotiating a few conditions. First, I wanted a clear outline of my responsibilities and boundaries. Second, I requested regular check-ins to ensure transparency. To my surprise, Charles agreed immediately. Maybe he saw my cautiousness as professionalism, or maybe he genuinely wanted to make things right. Either way, I walked away feeling cautiously optimistic. Walking into the office on my first day in the new division felt surreal. For starters, the atmosphere was completely different. Gone were the stiff suits and tense silences. Instead, the space buzzed with energy, creativity, and actual laughter. It was like stepping into another dimension of Sterling and Company, one where people cared about collaboration rather than competition. My new boss, Rachel Meyer, greeted me with a warm smile and a handshake that felt more like a lifeline. She introduced me to the team, a diverse group of brilliant minds who looked like they belonged in a TED Talk lineup. There was Marcus, the tech wizard with a knack for turning complex data into digestible insights, Priya, the marketing guru whose ideas could sell ice to Eskimos, and Jamal, the operations expert who seemed to have a solution for every problem. As we sat around the conference table brainstorming ideas, I couldn't help but feel a sense of belonging I'd never experienced before. These weren't just coworkers. They were allies, cheerleaders, and co-conspirators in creating something meaningful. But here's the thing about fresh starts. They come with their own set of challenges. While I loved my new role, I couldn't shake the nagging fear that Evan would find a way to interfere. After all, this was still his family's company, and he didn't strike me as the type to let go of grudges easily. Fast forward to week 2, and reality hit hard. Our team was tasked with pitching a proposal to a major client, a tech startup looking for innovative financial strategies to scale their business. Naturally, I volunteered to take the lead on the presentation, eager to prove myself both to my team and to Charles. For days, I poured my heart into crafting the perfect pitch. I stayed late, skipped lunch breaks, and even dreamed about pie charts. By the time the big day arrived, I was confident we had nailed it. But as I stood in front of the client, something unexpected happened. Mid-presentation, Evan walked in. Yeah, you read that right. He strolled into the conference room like he owned the place, which, technically, he kind of did. At first, I froze. His presence threw me off balance, and suddenly, the words I had rehearsed so meticulously started tumbling out awkwardly. The clients exchanged puzzled glances, and I could practically hear my confidence shattering like glass. But then something remarkable happened. Rachel stepped in, seamlessly picking up where I left off and steering the conversation back on track. Her calm demeanor and quick thinking saved the day, earning nods of approval from the clients. Afterward, as we wrapped up the meeting, Evan lingered behind, smirking like he'd won some sort of victory. Nice try, he muttered under his breath before walking away. I wanted to scream, cry, or maybe throw a stapler at his head, but instead, I took a deep breath and reminded myself of why I was there. This wasn't about him anymore. It was about proving to myself that I could handle whatever came my way. Evan's little stunt during the pitch didn't go unnoticed. When I reported the incident to Charles, he listened intently, his expression growing increasingly grim. I'll deal with him, he promised, though I wasn't entirely convinced. After all, Evan was his son, and blood often trumps logic in situations like these. Still, I refused to let him derail me. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into my work, determined to show that no amount of sabotage could stop me. With Rachel's guidance and the team's support, we refined our proposal and presented it again, this time without any interruptions. The clients loved it. In fact, they loved it so much that they signed a multi-year contract with Sterling and Company, citing our innovative approach and teamwork as key factors in their decision. When news of the deal reached senior management, accolades poured in, from everyone except Evan, of course. He dismissed the achievement as luck and accused me of riding on the team's coattails. But by then, I didn't care what he thought. His words no longer carried weight because I knew the truth. I had earned every ounce of success through grit, determination, and sheer willpower. Here's the ironic part about enemies. Sometimes, they end up being the ones who push you to become your best self. Take Evan, for example. Every snide comment, every attempt to undermine me only fueled my resolve to succeed. And succeed I did. But here's the twist. About a month after the tech startup deal, Evan approached me outside the office. At first, I braced myself for another verbal attack, but instead, he hesitated, looking almost sheepish. I heard about the project, he said, avoiding eye contact. It was good work. For a moment, I thought I misheard him. Did Evan Hartley just compliment me? Before I could respond, he added, Look, I know I've been difficult, but maybe I underestimated you. Part of me wanted to laugh in his face. Another part, the bigger, more forgiving part, felt a flicker of sympathy. Maybe Evan wasn't inherently evil. Maybe he was just insecure and misguided. I appreciate the acknowledgement, I replied coolly. But actions speak louder than words, Evan. If you really mean it, start treating people with respect. Not just when it benefits you. He nodded, looking genuinely contrite, and walked away. Did this mean he'd changed? Probably not. But it was a start, and sometimes, that's all you can ask for. Stay tuned, friends, because the real showdown is yet to come. Alright, let's talk about the elephant in the room, or should I say, the summit of doom. Every year, Sterling and Company hosts this big corporate event called the Innovation Summit. It's basically a mix between a TED conference and a high-stakes sales pitch where teams present their projects to clients, investors, and industry leaders. Think glitzy presentations, networking over artisanal hors d'oeuvres, and enough ego in the room to power Manhattan for a week. Guess who got tapped to represent our division? Yep, yours truly. Now, don't get me wrong, I was honored. But deep down, I couldn't help but feel like I'd been handed a ticking time bomb. Why? Because Evan was slated to speak too. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here we were, two people who couldn't stand each other, sharing the same stage in front of hundreds of people. If that wasn't dramatic enough to warrant its own Netflix series, I don't know what is. In the weeks leading up to the summit, I threw myself into preparing my presentation. This wasn't just any speech, it was my chance to showcase everything I'd worked for since being rehired. I wanted it to be perfect. No, scratch that, I wanted it to be unforgettable. But here's the thing about perfectionism, it can eat you alive if you're not careful. There were nights when I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying worst-case scenarios in my head. What if I froze again? What if Evan tried to sabotage me mid-presentation? What if everyone realized I didn't belong there after all? One evening, Mia stopped by my apartment with a bottle of wine and a no-nonsense attitude. "Sophie," she said, pouring us each a glass, "you're focusing on all the wrong things. Stop worrying about what Evan might do and start thinking about why you're doing this. You're not up there to prove him wrong. You're up there to show yourself what you're capable of." Her words hit me like a lightning bolt. She was right. This wasn't about Evan anymore. It was about me reclaiming my voice, my confidence, and my place in the world. With renewed focus, I practiced my presentation until I could deliver it in my sleep. I even recorded myself and played it back, cringing at every awkward pause or misplaced emphasis. By the time the summit rolled around, I felt ready, or as ready as anyone could be walking into a lion's den. The day of the summit arrived, and let me tell you, nerves don't even begin to describe how I felt. As I stood backstage waiting for my turn to speak, I could hear Evan wrapping up his segment. His voice carried through the speakers, smooth and polished, as he touted his latest achievements. Then came the kicker. In his closing remarks, he casually mentioned a recent partnership with a tech startup, our tech startup, the one I had pitched and secured. Without skipping a beat, he claimed partial credit for the deal, implying that his oversight had been instrumental to its success. I clenched my fists so hard my nails dug into my palms. Of course, he'd pull something like this. But instead of letting anger consume me, I took a deep breath and reminded myself of Mia's advice. This wasn't about him. It was about me. When my name was announced, I stepped onto the stage, heart pounding but head held high. The spotlight felt blinding, but as I scanned the audience, I locked eyes with Charles. He gave me an encouraging nod, and suddenly I felt grounded. "Good morning," I began, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. "My name is Sophie Lane, and today I want to talk about resilience, the kind of resilience that pushes you to keep going when the odds are stacked against you." You could have heard a pin drop. I launched into my story, weaving together the challenges I'd faced and the lessons I'd learned along the way. I talked about being dismissed, fired, and underestimated, but also about finding strength in adversity and building a team that believed in me. By the time I reached the part about securing the tech startup deal, I made sure to acknowledge everyone involved, including Rachel and the rest of the team. Then, with a pointed glance at Evan sitting in the front row, I added, "Success isn't built alone. It's built through collaboration, trust, and giving credit where it's due." The audience erupted into applause, and for the first time in years, I felt truly seen. As I walked off stage, Charles intercepted me, pulling me aside. "That was incredible," he said, his eyes shining with pride. "Thank you for reminding us all what leadership really looks like." Meanwhile, Evan sat stone-faced, clearly rattled. Mission accomplished. If looks could kill, I'd have dropped dead on the spot based on the glare Evan shot me during the post-summit reception. But honestly, I didn't care. For once, I wasn't afraid of him, or anyone else, for that matter. Unsurprisingly, Evan's thinly veiled attempt to steal credit for our project didn't sit well with senior management. Over the next few days, whispers circulated about his behavior, culminating in a private meeting with Charles. While I wasn't privy to the details, the aftermath spoke volumes. Evan was demoted, stripped of his title, and placed under strict supervision. Charles later confided in me that he'd given Evan an ultimatum: shape up or ship out. Part of me felt sorry for him, not because I forgave his actions, but because I recognized the toll his choices had taken on him. Arrogance and insecurity make a toxic combination, and Evan was drowning in both. Still, justice doesn't always mean revenge. Sometimes, it means holding people accountable while leaving room for growth. Whether Evan would rise to the occasion remained to be seen, but for now, I chose to focus on my own journey. A few weeks after the summit, our team celebrated the tech startup deal with dinner at a trendy rooftop restaurant in Midtown. Laughter filled the air as we toasted to our collective achievements, and for the first time in forever, I felt like I belonged somewhere. Rachel raised her glass and said, "To Sophie, for showing us all what it means to lead with integrity, grace, and a killer spreadsheet." Everyone cheered, and I felt tears prick the corners of my eyes. Later that night, as I walked home under a canopy of stars, I reflected on how far I'd come. From being labeled useless to standing on a stage accepting applause, I had reclaimed pieces of myself I thought I'd lost forever. But the real victory wasn't external, it was internal. I had proven to myself that I was stronger than I ever imagined. And that, my friends, was worth more than any award or accolade. Fast forward a year, and life looked drastically different. I was still at Sterling and Company, but now I led the Innovative Solutions division full-time. Under my guidance, the team expanded, tackling projects that pushed boundaries and challenged norms. More importantly, the company culture began to shift. Thanks to initiatives I spearheaded, including mentorship programs and anti-harassment training, Sterling and Company became a beacon of inclusivity and innovation. Young professionals looked to me as a role model, and Charles often credited me with helping him see the importance of fostering diverse voices within the organization. As for Evan, well, let's just say humility suits some people better than arrogance. He quietly worked to rebuild his reputation, though our relationship remained frosty at best. Still, I respected his effort to change, even if it came too late to erase the damage he'd caused. On the anniversary of the summit, I found myself back in Central Park, sipping coffee and watching the sunrise. Life had thrown me curveballs, but I'd caught them and thrown a few of my own. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Resilience isn't about avoiding failure, it's about rising every time you fall. And trust me, when you rise, the view is breathtaking. So, dear listeners, thank you for sticking with me through this wild ride. If my story resonates with you, hit subscribe and share your own journey in the comments below. Because remember, we're all works in progress, and sometimes the hardest battles lead to the sweetest victories. Let me tell you something about change. It's like tossing a pebble into a pond. At first, the impact seems small, just a tiny splash that barely registers. But then the ripples spread, touching everything in their path. That's exactly what happened after I found my footing at Sterling and Company. The initiatives I helped launch didn't just transform the company culture, they inspired others to speak up and demand better. Colleagues who had once stayed silent about workplace injustices began sharing their stories. Some even credited me with giving them the courage to confront their own Evans. One story that stuck with me came from a junior analyst named Priya. No, not the marketing guru on my team, but another Priya who worked in a different division. She sent me an email one evening, thanking me for standing up to Evan during the summit. "Your words reminded me that I deserve respect," she wrote. "Because of you, I finally reported a manager who had been bullying me for months. It wasn't easy, but it was worth it." Reading her message brought tears to my eyes. It hit me then. This wasn't just about me anymore. My actions, or lack thereof, had the power to influence others, whether I realized it or not. And knowing that, well, it made every late night, every stressful moment, and every battle worth fighting feel infinitely meaningful. Now let's talk about forgiveness, not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. Don't get me wrong, forgiving someone like Evan doesn't mean excusing their behavior. It means choosing peace over bitterness, growth over resentment. Months after his demotion, Evan approached me again, this time outside the office, at a charity gala hosted by Sterling and Company. He looked different, less polished, more human. When he asked if we could talk privately, I hesitated but agreed. I owe you an apology, he said once we were alone. His voice lacked its usual arrogance, replaced instead by genuine remorse. I treated you poorly, Sophie. Not just you, everyone. I thought being tough meant being cruel, but all I did was alienate people. For a moment, I considered brushing him off. After everything he'd put me through, he didn't deserve absolution. But then I remembered Charles's words. Accountability leaves room for growth. So instead of lashing out, I nodded. Apology accepted, I replied. But remember, actions matter more than words. If you're serious about changing, prove it. Not just to me, but to everyone you've hurt. Evan swallowed hard, nodding. I will. I promise. Did I believe him? Maybe. Maybe not. But what mattered was that he took the first step toward redemption, and sometimes that's enough. As my role at Sterling and Company evolved, so did my responsibilities. I started mentoring young professionals, sharing the lessons I'd learned along the way. Each session felt like planting seeds in fertile soil. You never know which ones will grow into towering trees, but the potential is always there. One mentee, a bright-eyed intern named Marcus, stood out to me. He reminded me of myself back when I first joined the company, eager to prove himself but unsure of his place in the world. During one of our meetings, he confessed that he often doubted his abilities, fearing he wasn't good enough to succeed in such a competitive environment. Marcus, I said gently, do you know why people doubt themselves? Because they care. They want to do well, to make an impact. Doubt isn't your enemy, it's proof that you're invested. The trick is learning how to channel it into fuel for your fire. He smiled, looking visibly relieved. Over the next few months, I watched him blossom, taking on challenges with newfound confidence. By the end of his internship, he secured a full-time position and thanked me for believing in him when he couldn't believe in himself. It struck me then, mentorship isn't just about teaching skills, it's about instilling hope. And hope, my friends, is the most powerful tool we have. Fast forward to the awards ceremony I mentioned earlier, the one where I stood on stage accepting an honor for outstanding leadership and financial innovation. Walking up to receive the trophy, I couldn't help but reflect on how far I'd come. The applause was deafening, but what moved me most were the faces in the audience. Rachel, beaming with pride. Charles, nodding approvingly. Even Evan, clapping politely from the back of the room. When it came time to speak, I gripped the microphone tightly, my heart swelling with emotion. This award isn't just mine, I began, my voice steady despite the lump in my throat. It belongs to everyone who believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. To my team, who showed me the power of collaboration. To Charles, who gave me a second chance. And to everyone here tonight, who reminds us daily that resilience isn't about avoiding failure, it's about rising stronger each time we fall. The crowd erupted into cheers, and for the first time, I allowed myself to fully embrace the moment. This wasn't just validation of my hard work, it was proof that perseverance pays off. After the ceremony, as I sipped champagne and mingled with guests, I found myself reflecting on the future. Where do you go after reaching a milestone like this? Do you rest on your laurels, content with what you've achieved? Or do you keep pushing forward, chasing new horizons? For me, the answer was clear. There's always more to do. More lives to touch, more barriers to break, more dreams to chase. Sterling and Company had become my home, but I knew my journey wasn't confined to its walls. That night, as I walked home under a sky scattered with stars, I made a promise to myself. No matter where life takes me next, I'll continue using my voice to uplift others. Because if my story can inspire even one person to rise above their struggles, then every challenge I faced will have been worth it. Before I wrap this up, I want to leave you with something personal, a reminder that no matter where you are in your journey, you are enough. Yes, you. Life has a way of testing us, doesn't it? It throws obstacles in our path, knocks us down, and whispers cruel lies about our worth. But here's the truth. You are capable of more than you think. Your scars don't define you, they shape you. Your failures don't limit you, they teach you. And your dreams, they're closer than they seem. If I can go from being called useless to standing on a stage accepting an award, trust me, you can overcome whatever's holding you back. All it takes is one decision, to rise, to fight, to believe. So, dear listeners, thank you for joining me on this incredible journey. If my story resonates with you, please subscribe, share, and comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And remember, the best chapters of your life haven't been written yet. Keep going, keep growing, keep shining. Until next time, this is Sophie Lane signing off. Stay fearless. Let me zoom out for a moment and talk about something bigger than me, bigger than Sterling and Company, the ripple effect of change in an entire industry. You see, when you stand up for yourself and others, it doesn't just impact your immediate circle. It has the power to shift paradigms. And that's exactly what happened as my work gained traction outside the company walls. After the summit and subsequent awards, my story started making waves. A former colleague, someone I barely remembered, wrote a LinkedIn post about my journey, calling me a beacon of resilience and integrity. That single post went viral, sparking conversations across social media about workplace fairness, leadership accountability, and the importance of amplifying marginalized voices. Soon, I was invited to speak at conferences, podcasts, and panel discussions. At first, I hesitated. Public speaking still made my palms sweat, and the thought of being labeled an industry disruptor felt daunting. But then I realized, if I didn't use this platform to advocate for change, who would? One event stands out, a keynote address at the Women in Finance conference in Chicago. Standing before hundreds of ambitious professionals, I shared not just my successes but also my failures. I talked about the nights I cried in my car after Evan's insults, the fear of starting over, and the moments of doubt that almost broke me. Here's the thing, I said, gripping the podium tightly. Success isn't about never falling, it's about refusing to stay down. It's about looking in the mirror and saying, I am worth fighting for. Because if you don't believe in yourself, no one else will. The room erupted into applause, and afterward, dozens of women approached me, sharing their own stories of struggle and triumph. One woman handed me her card, tears streaming down her face. Thank you, she whispered. Your words reminded me why I started this career in the first place. In that moment, I understood the true weight of my responsibility. This wasn't just about me anymore, it was about paving the way for future generations. Now, let's talk endings and beginnings. Because while this chapter of my life feels complete, the book is far from finished. A few months ago, Charles pulled me aside during one of our regular check-ins. Sophie, he said, his tone unusually serious, you've done more for this company than I ever imagined possible. But I think it's time you considered branching out on your own. At first, I laughed it off. Me? Start my own business? The idea seemed laughable. But the more I thought about it, the more it resonated. Over the years, I'd built a reputation as someone who championed innovation, collaboration, and inclusivity. Why not take those values and create something entirely new? So here I am, drafting plans for my own consulting firm, one focused on helping small businesses and startups navigate financial challenges while fostering diverse, equitable workplaces. It's scary, sure, but also exhilarating. For the first time in years, I feel like I'm stepping fully into my purpose. As for Sterling and Company, I'll always cherish the lessons I learned there, the good and the bad. Charles has promised to stay involved as a mentor, and even Rachel joked about joining me once I get things off the ground. As for Evan, well, let's just say we've reached a cautious truce. He's still working to rebuild his reputation, and while I'll never forget the pain he caused, I respect his efforts to grow. Before I sign off for good, I want to leave you with a letter I wrote to myself last week. It's become a tradition of sorts, writing letters to remind myself of how far I've come and where I hope to go next. Dear Sophie, first, congratulations. You did it. Remember that girl sitting in her car, crying because she thought she wasn't good enough? Look at her now. She's standing tall, leading with courage, and inspiring others to do the same. But don't stop here. Life is a marathon, not a sprint, and every finish line is just the beginning of another race. Keep pushing forward, keep learning, and keep lifting others as you climb. Never lose sight of the values that brought you here: integrity, resilience, and compassion. Most importantly, remember this: you are enough. Always have been, always will be. With love, your future self. And so, dear listeners, this is where I say goodbye for now. Thank you for walking alongside me through the highs and lows, the laughter and tears, the doubts and victories. If there's one thing I hope you take away from my story, it's this: no matter how dark things may seem, there's always light waiting to break through. All you have to do is keep moving toward it. If you enjoyed this series, please subscribe, share, and leave a comment below. Your support means the world to me. And hey, maybe someday our paths will cross. I'd love to hear your story too. Until then, stay fearless, stay kind, and above all, stay unstoppable. This is Sophie Lane, signing off for the last time.